All right. Hi there, everyone. My name is Tom Levine. I'm Cornerstone's technical specialist and commission specialist as well. But today we're going to be talking about automation. Automation has a very wide scope, and I feel like when everyone thinks about automation, people tend to think about factories and large-scale kind of things like that. But automation's taken a bit of a turn in recent years, and so we're just going to talk about that, how it would impact our industry and insurance, and what to look forward to. So before we really get moving here, just a couple of housekeeping points. Um, First off, if you have a question, please feel free to type it in the box at any time. I'll answer questions at the very end of the presentation, but I'll also answer questions throughout the presentation if I think it pertains to the topic at hand. So don't hesitate to type anything there. Also, if you don't feel like you should ask that question then, feel free to ask me, later. I have a phone number up on the screen, 513-487-5390, and I'm also able to be contacted at tlevine@crnstone.com. Don't worry about writing that down now. I'll put this slide up at the end as well. Also, don't forget about our Refer an Agent program. If you know an agent who might also benefit from working with us, you just go ahead and refer them. We'll pay you $250 when they place their first paid application, and it's a pretty straightforward process, so it's pretty easy. You'll earn a $250 bonus if they submit business within that 6-month period, so pretty solid. Also, there's our marketing consultation program. This is designed to help you reevaluate your brand and maybe elevate your marketing. Our marketing person, Jess, is really top notch. Jess Larkin is amazing, and I'd highly recommend you take advantage of this. It is first come, first served, and there is high demand. So if you're interested in renovating your brand and working with us to build up your marketing, please feel free. So that being said, welcome to automation. We're specifically interacting with automation. Nowadays in insurance, there's a lot of automation you interact with that you might not see at first glance. First being automated phone trees. That's probably at the forefront of everyone's mind. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes that people don't often see. So we're going to talk about that today and a little bit about why automation is occurring. So in my mind, the best place to start is to look at the pros and cons of different types of automation. And there are different types. The first general positives that come from overall automation are increased efficiency in tasks, along with perfect reliability for repetitive tasks, better communication and standardization of tasks for employees. So if you're assigning work to people in your office, then they can see and get a better idea of what all they need to do all at once. Because if you're distributing tasks in an automated manner, they all see the same thing. Also, management then has a better view of who gets what done and what gets done by who. Because everything would be automated, whenever someone interacted with that system, it leaves like a stamp or like a notice that someone accessed this. And so they can tell who accessed what and who finished what. Also, communication becomes more transparent between parts of your company. Because everything is automated, you know what notices go where, so you know exactly where tasks are assigned and everyone understands what everyone else is working on. And finally, because of all these improvements, overall productivity increases. This is less impactful directly for insurance, but in things like marketing organizations or any sort of other office environment, or really any office environment in general, these benefits are pretty awesome. There are some negatives, however, first being the short-term setup and fragmented infrastructure that it can cause. It can cause people to get a little confused, want to revert back to the old way of doing things, and that's a short-term issue, but it gets overcome pretty quick. Also, it increases the strain on your IT resources and requires an additional investment in technology that some people aren't willing to make. Also, it causes issues with end users, mainly, people who actually interact with the technology day to day. And we'll get more into that here in a second. But those are just the benefits. What's the current state of automation? Well, most offices have at least some form of automation in use, and most people's jobs, up to 30% of them, can be automated. That's just general numbers. There's more and more automation occurring every day, whether that's a good or bad thing. And it's not only in factories where physical automation is the most visible but slowest growing. These would be things like, replacing line workers with an automated bottling process or something like that. Replacing physical jobs with other machines that will do those physical jobs. It can also be phone trees and directories, which I mentioned earlier, taking over some of the job of secretaries in, routing calls. It could also be auto-forwarded emails. So an email sent to a general inbox, like what we now have set up in commissions, that then gets forwarded out to an appropriate person. If you just send an email to commissions@sierraandstone.com, that goes to our general inbox, and that is received by everyone in our commissions staff. We also have things like robocalls and telemarketing. This is probably the most visible one to everyone directly, because I don't know anyone anymore who hasn't at least gotten 1 or 2 robocalls a week. And while there's a lot of legislation around those, it's hard to actually enforce. So that's why you get those calls. Unfortunately, this does have another side effect, which is hyperautomation. The pictures on the screen are just sort of a front-end sample of hyperautomation. The middle picture there is of a fully automated forklift, which Amazon sometimes uses in its factories to transport large-scale goods. What they do is they're given instructions for what items to get. They know the layout of whatever factory they're doing or walking around, and then they will just go get those items in the most efficient way possible and going at a safe but consistent speed without needing breaks. That middle one is an example of physical automation, and it's something that most factory workers have had to contend with nowadays. On the left-hand side, however, we have some of the automation that most people are familiar with, those automated checkout kiosks that everyone sees at Kroger. And then there's also a little robot there down at the bottom. These are being more implemented in Asia, but they're rolling out more and more in the US. What they do is they act like those order kiosks. You type in your order into the robot, and then it'll literally go and get your order. So that's a level of automation that's a little excessive in my opinion. And finally, we have those McDonald's self-order kiosks, which eliminate any need to interact with any person to actually place an order at McDonald's for unknown real reasons. But the reasons I bring these up and the reason I point to them as aspects of hyperautomation is because hyperautomation is a hazard of our current economic environment. There are a lot of factors driving it, but one of the main ones is that there are tax benefits to automating things. If you make an investment in a new machine, you can use it as a tax write-off, for example, and it can save you on having to pay out labor costs, which are taxed higher. Also, it doesn't exactly really save work. You'd think that by getting rid of the middleman, the person taking orders or the person who's actually checking you out, it would actually save everyone time and effort and strain. But if you've ever used one of these self-checkout kiosks, as you really know, all it does is offload the work to the consumer. So instead of having someone just scan your items and solve all your problems directly, if you ever scan a bottle of alcohol at checkout, you now have to wait for someone to actually walk up to you and present your ID, and you can't just scan a barcode on the back or anything like that. They have to physically look at it. So it adds a little bit of time there. It also makes it so that instead of paying workers, the company saves money and it just offloads the work of a checkout person to you. So not exactly helpful, but I mean, it has saved everyone time. I know that I personally use those self-checkout kiosks a lot, just because I normally shop for small items and I don't want to wait through a full line to check out for 3 things. So helpful or harmful, it's kind of up in the air. But it's an example of a company spending money on automation where it's not exactly necessary. Also, automation takes about 4 separate forms, and I've got those outlined sort of up here. The first is that basic automation. It centralizes and combines applications. So what I mean by this is, let's say your company has a chat. Here at Cornerstone, we use something called Ring Central, which kind of combines all aspects of our phones, faxes, and instant messaging services. So all of those are now located on one central platform. What that means is, for our infrastructure, if anyone ever has to change a number or update anything with regard to our phone list, it automates everything. So instead of having to go through maybe 3 or 4 different things and add a forwarding number and update phone lists, all we have to do is go into the Ring Central application, change a phone number, we're done. This is also accomplished by Google Voice, I believe is what it's called, which allows you to substitute any sort of phone number for your physical phone number, and it'll set up auto forwarding. This is more used by telemarketers and scammers right now. But if you wanted to, say, leave a fake number for an online service you were signing up for, it's a good example of when you could use it. And it's just centralizing all of your phone applications. Then there's process automation. And process automation is something that a lot of companies have already sort of been looking for. It focuses on documentation and sharing of task information. If you work at any sort of medium to large size company nowadays, or even a lot of small businesses, you'll have something like, what's Microsoft's product called? I believe it's Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts, anything where you can have your employees go document their tasks, what they're doing, and then load all of their documents into it is an example of process automation. What it does is it makes what everyone's doing visible to the whole company, and at least generally the people who need to know about it. And what it does is it lets everyone know what's going on a group project. Let's say marketing is working with brokers to talk about what rates they're going to give employees, or what rates they're going to give different clients. All of it's located in one central location and everyone knows where to access it. That's an example of process automation. Another example of process automation is having deadlines that everyone's working towards to work toward an end goal. So let's say marketing needs to get like a sample, to the person heading up the project on Thursday so they can release the first draft on Friday to everyone. That's something that you can document and automate out by showing what needs done when, and it can give you little notifications of if you're hitting your deadlines or not. Finally, there's integration automation. Two last things, sorry. Integration automation replaces existing repetitive duties with AI-based processing or automated-based processing, and that's something that I actually do here at Cornerstone. It's something that you can do with Excel to automate spreadsheets. It's something that you can do with email to automate repetitive moving of emails. For example, in emails, which I can probably show you at the end of the presentation, we should have time, you can set up a rule in your email so that any email from like a group of people or an automated individual gets forwarded to a specific inbox and you can see it there. That's an example of integration automation where you're using automation to sort of supplement existing repetitive duties and take those away from people. For instance, in our shared commissions folder that I mentioned earlier, the way we have it set up, at least on my computer, is that all of the emails that I get sent to the general team go to one inbox, and I know, okay, these are probably requests for follow-ups on commissions or some other sort of general commission related task, and it's not something directed at me personally. And that can help improve my speed when I'm going through things. I like to take the time to look at emails sent directly to me because I think, they probably pertain to something I'm working on. But if it's something going to a general commissions inbox, I know it's something that Leslie down here in commissions or I can look at within the next hour or so, and it doesn't need immediate attention, which is pretty helpful. Finally, and the most visible part of anything is robotic automation, which is fully replacing human interactions with robotic automation. It got a little bit cut off there. But what that means is things like those automated forklifts, replacing people who are running around factories to actually get, items with robots to run around factories and get items. They fully replace the human interactive bit. And that's the part that people see most often when they think, oh, automation is replacing jobs. There are conflicting numbers on that too, by the way. A lot of people think that automation is just all about replacing jobs that already exist, but that's not quite the case. The number I gave earlier was about 30% of everyone's job is automatable. And what I meant by that is at least 30% of the work you're doing, more often than not, depending on the work you do, is repetitive work. It's stuff that you could just tell anyone with half a brain, okay, do this repeatedly over time. Do these steps over and over and over again. And those are the types of things that automation excels at. And it's what can save you a lot of time and effort in your work and make you more productive. So from that aspect, automation can be helpful. On the other hand, if that's all of your job, then automation can be hurtful, and it causes a lot of lower level, low paid jobs to disappear. And that tends to be what we see. So that being said, although you can probably gather a general idea of what I'm getting at, where is automation going? What are the next real frontiers for automation in every industry, really? And the first one is troubleshooting systems. Honestly, a lot of IT is very routine. If you ever called into like a Microsoft help desk nowadays, you've probably had the little interactive chatbot that says, "What is your problem? What have you been interacting with? Can you give me a brief description of your error?" Those are troubleshooting systems that have been automated. And in one of my favorite shows, IT Crowd, which I have that little meme from up there, they actually fully automate their general IT process. And the first question anyone asks is, have you tried turning it on and off again? So that's something that is automatable. Then, have you tried closing and restarting the program, so on and so forth. If you walk through all the normal checkboxes and you still have a problem, then it'll forward you to a real person. And that's what I mean when I say automation can save time. It's repeatable information that everyone should try first before actually troubleshooting things. And actually, if you do have trouble troubleshooting things, that's what our next Tech Tuesday is going to be about, I believe. So if you have issues interacting with computers and want a way to, fix it yourself, then you might want to tune in 2 weeks. Another thing is, online tools for case submissions in our industry, at least. Things like FormFire, which we're here at Cornerstone actively using already. A lot of case submissions are now going to be going through online portals. You see it a lot with the, not ODI, but a lot of like submission systems for ACA. The marketplace, for example. That's an example of a automated system to submit cases. You also see a lot of automation in reporting and data analysis. Things like automatically creating reports at the end of the month. So you get a raw amount of data out of your system, and then you just hit go on like a macro, and it creates full tables for you that you don't have to interact with at all to create. And you can just look at the general result and go, okay, I'm missing this here, missing that there. Okay, well, here's where I need to follow up. And then you can send emails. There's also standardized data manipulation, which is something that's going to be a lot more impactful here coming up. What it does is it takes data that's exported from a system for reporting and analysis, and then warps it a little further. So it takes the general raw data and then tells you, okay, what are you trying to see from this data? And it will take it and move it a step further to give you reliable conclusions from that. That's more of an AI-based process, and it's something that's still in the works, but I think it's a really cool thing that's coming out. So now that we've seen what automation is used for, how it could be helpful, and where it's going, what do we as people need to know to interact with these systems, and how to understand where it's going and what we'll see in the future? Clearly, the benefits for larger corporations outweigh the cost. They get to offload some of their workforce, save a bunch of money on the automation costs with tax, and they get to, save a bunch of money overall. So it's really good for them, which means that us here as individuals are going to have to interact with automation more. It's just the way the world's going. Because of that, we need to understand how to interact with machines, software, and other sorts of things to get along in the world, really. That's just where things are going, so it's where we need to go to, evolve and survive. So, because of the improved efficiencies offered by robotics, we have to evolve too. But how do we interact with these systems like a pro? Well, if possible, if you're trying to avoid automation, try to communicate via email first. There is a level of automation involved in email. Obviously, you're probably going to be sending an email to a general inbox first. But when you reach out to someone and talk to them directly, it's helpful. Oftentimes you'll get an automated response or something that's a little bit cookie cutter. But if you then reply to that, mark your issue as high importance in your email, or maybe include important in the header if you really need someone to talk to you, you tend to get some human interaction. And that's because these automated systems are looking for keywords like that. Anything marked as high importance in my email, at least, will get flagged and I'll get a notice that someone sent me an email marked as high importance. So a lot of these automated systems will do similar things. Also, if you're trying to do your best, you can try to learn what you need to do with a system automatically. Maybe jot down exactly what you need to do in a system. For instance, if you're interacting with a phone call tree, write down 153 if those are the series of numbers you need to hit. So you hear a prompt at 1, you hear another prompt at 2, you hear another prompt at 3, and you can just sort of speed your way through the phone tree. So that's something that you can do real quick to help yourself out. Also, don't just go in blind. If you hear that, an automated system interaction may have changed, listen all the way through to it. That's something that I always do the first time I call a carrier that I've never interacted with, because I can often listen all the way through their phone tree and find other things that might be helpful. For example, I was listening through a phone tree the other day, and commissions was like option 2, but through listening to the rest of it, I heard that, specifically group automation and group commissions were a whole nother extension that I wouldn't have known about if I hadn't listened to the full phone tree. So at least the first time, listen to their prompts all the way through if you're listening through a phone tree. Also, don't just go in blind. If you've got an instruction booklet or something to help you with the system, read through it. You don't have to read through it all the way even either. If you use the index, it'll probably point you to things that you go, oh, I'll interact with that. And then you can just read through the little paragraph or so on your specific section of their website or their automated system, and it should help you out a great deal. Also, when possible, jot down quick contact information for IT or any sort of technical issue resolution. Oftentimes, if you look at a website, it'll say for help, click here, but it won't be super bold. It's probably somewhere around the login box, and that's just another helpful little tip. You can also improve your general knowledge of technology by participating in things like Tech Tuesday, because I like self-promotion. But genuinely, it does help. The more you interact with technology, the more you see commonalities between all of the things. It's not like everything is always going to be cookie cutter exactly the same, but a lot of systems have general interactions that are very similar, like that help button that I mentioned. Or, if you're interacting with an automated system, saying help or something like that is pretty standard to, finding things to help. Finally, more specifically, phone tree advice, which is what I'm sure everyone here is really looking for. The first thing I'd like to say, though, is that list the numbers that you have to press normally in phone trees. Genuinely, it saves a lot of time. The last time I called Anthem, I didn't listen to their phone tree at all. I just got automated prompt, hit 1, automated prompt, hit 3, automated prompt, hit 7, and then I was already on the waiting line. So it saved me about good minute or so. And if you have to make calls like that frequently, it can save you a lot of time and it adds up. Also, you might want to listen through all the call options first time, like I mentioned. But here's the real kicker. If you want to listen through all the way, oftentimes it'll say something like, to speak to a representative, press 5 or something. And that's really why I'd recommend listening through all the phone tree. If you're trying to really save time and you really can't interact with technology really at all, and you're just trying to get through something, that's why I'd recommend being patient and listening through all your options. Oftentimes too, if you don't have press X to get someone, mash 0. That's another one that automatically tends to get you kicked to a representative. If it detects that you can't interact with the system at all, or that you're giving it a bunch of inputs that don't matter, a lot of systems automatically kick you to a real person, like an operator. You might also be able to get around it by just saying representative, representative, representative over and over and over, and it'll often just kick you to a representative. That's another commonality between a lot of phone trees. And finally, when you do get a hold of someone, be direct and upfront with what you're looking for, and then include later details. I had a commission issue the other day that I was trying to troubleshoot. And when I called, the person, I said, I'm looking for an issue on this case. This broker hasn't been paid. Once they pulled the information up, I say, here's the other part of it. It's been ongoing. We've had a lot of issues with an AOR at first, and then misrepresented documentation. I have an email I want to send in, but I need to know that it gets to someone. And that's why I'm calling. Do you mind if I email you directly? And the issue got solved in like 5 minutes, versus sending in an email to their general inbox, waiting a full 3 days, those kinds of things. It can really speed up processes. Some other things I'd like to recommend are, bolding and italicizing any information in emails that you send to humans. A lot of times, when I send out automated, AGB enrollments, AGB is our automated system here that give people access to a little bit more than just commission statements now. We're looking on fully upgrading it. But basically what I do is I include in bold AGB, because people tend to forget what AGB is, or they don't read through my message. So bolding things tends to make them think, oh, I need to look here and read this. Also, you could italicize information that's important as well. So finally, what do you really need to do when it all boils down to fully avoiding these systems when you need to, other than trying to communicate by email first, and including more than you really would want to in an original message. I often get emails from people that just say, hello, can you help with this policy? And they just give me a client. They don't give me a policy number. I won't get things like, full background of client information, and I have to go in and look all that up myself, which takes time. It's not like I have everything memorized. So when you're interacting with people who interact with systems, the more information, the better. Be brief up top, and then expand as you go through your email. The more you can include, the better, typically. And a lot of people don't just see large walls of text and get intimidated. I try to keep my emails to 3 paragraphs at the most, but I will go long if I need to. And include as much documentation as you can up front as well. The more information you include, the more likely it is that your issue gets resolved quickly. Also, call direct numbers versus general lines when you can. A lot of people like me will try to reinforce calling general lines, or hey, can you please, call our commissions hotline or things like that first. And that's fine for most things. But if you have an issue that's been long going and you really need to talk to someone, be kind to your operators and talk to them slowly, interact with them, get to know them, and then, try to talk to them, and they'll probably give you a direct line. I know a lot of people at Anthem have given me direct lines just because I've been nice, talkative, polite, and then ask, hey, I have these issues, they're ongoing. Do you mind if I reach out to you directly on these so I have a continued point of contact? And that tends to work. Also, you could try to schedule physical meetings versus phone calls. That's a lot easier now that COVID restrictions have sort of laxed back. But you could also try to schedule online meetings. Things like this webinar are very useful for interacting directly with people, and it can get you around a lot of the phone trees and other automation that is built up in a lot of larger businesses. Finally, be upfront with people if you have technical problems. I get calls from 2 or 3 brokers routinely who just can't interact with our website. They don't know how to interact with automation, and that's okay. These are things that have popped up relatively recently, and they're really, if you don't have the skill for interacting with systems, you just don't have the skill for it. Oftentimes, if you're upfront with people, they'll understand and they'll work with you. It's really a human touch that tends to get you around a lot of these technical systems, and people tend to forget that. So, another option is to call a marketing or sales department directly. That's something that I tend to do if I really can't get something through the automation that's built up around commissions processing, is I'll just call a marketing person and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Can you get a hold of them and, try to see what's going on for me? And oftentimes they will. Marketing people and salespeople are there for you, and they want you to be most effective and make most sales. So they'll often go out of their way to make sure you get a correct answer. You can also try to establish rapport, like I mentioned before. In emails, bullets up top, then a history of the problem, and then deeper information you're trying to provide. And I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse with this information, but really those are things you need to take away from this. It's the easiest way to interact and get around automation. Bolding and italicizing information for important bullets, and the last thing I'll mention, because it's really effective, but I don't recommend it. If you have a bunch of contacts at an agency and you have a problem that you really need solved, like now, contact everyone. It'll get you a lot of calls back, and it'll get you a lot of people jumping for your problem. I got a broker about a week ago who needed help getting into our automated system. And instead of just contacting commissions, they reached out. They probably weren't really sure where to reach out, but they reached out to literally everyone in their contact list individually, like over and over and over, about, hey, I need this information. Hey, I need this information. Hey, I need this information. And I ended up getting 5 or 6 different emails from people throughout that day saying, hey, this person needs you to reach out to them. Hey, this person needs you to reach out to them. Hey, this person needs you to reach out to them. I took care of it after the second email because I thought, okay, this person really needs help. And then I kept getting notices throughout the day, but made me think, oh, I really need to jump on this. And so if you can contact a bunch of people at an agency and you really need something done, it gets the job done. It gives you a reputation, but it gets the job done. So it's a point of no return, but it's something that I'd recommend if you really, really are having issues. Just talk to literally everyone you can. So that being said, those are just the common ways to get around automation. If you have a more specific problem, please feel free to ask it here, and I'm more than happy to help give advice. Or if maybe you want some, help for how to automate your email or do something else, I'm here as a resource to help you through it. If you're watching this presentation recorded as well, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at the contact information there on your screen, and I am happy to explain anything further or in a little bit more detail. As always, I've been Tom Levine, your tech guru and Cornerstone technical specialist. Hope you have a great day, and if you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.